Listen up, Bears faithful, because the biggest question mark looming over our defense just got a whole lot more intense. We've all been sweating over the lack of depth opposite our star pass rusher. And while the front office seems content with the current roster, a massive opportunity might be knocking on our door sooner than we think. Could a game-changing trade finally be in the works to solidify our defensive front? You won't want to miss what I'm about to break down for you. Smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment below. Let's dive into this. The biggest disappointment for the Chicago Bears throughout this 2026 offseason centers on the glaring lack of action regarding the edge rusher position. Even though edge pressure remains one of the most vital components for any competitive NFL defense, the organization has opted to make zero additions to support Montez Sweat. The current situation remains undeniably shaky, as the depth chart behind Sweat relies on players who are either unproven or facing significant physical hurdles. Austin Booker and Shamar Turner currently carry the weight of expectation despite their limited track records. Furthermore, both Shamar Turner and Dayo Odeyingbo are coming off a season that saw them struggle significantly, and both are currently working their way back from serious injuries. Despite these obvious question marks, head coach Ben Johnson has expressed faith that these specific individuals will rise to the challenge. The internal plan relies on better coaching to help Austin Booker, Shamar Turner, and Dayo Odeyingbo make the necessary progress to provide the defensive front with a reliable complement to Montez Sweat. While the current roster strategy prioritizes internal development over external acquisitions, the fan base and analysts alike remain focused on whether this group can actually deliver the production required to anchor the defensive line. Without a clear veteran addition to ease the pressure on these younger players, the spotlight remains firmly fixed on whether this coaching staff can maximize the potential of a unit that looked vulnerable throughout the previous year. As the team prepares for the upcoming season, the decision to stand pat at such a premium position stands as the defining narrative of their offseason management, forcing a reliance on unproven talent to bridge the gap in a high-stakes defensive scheme. Bear down! The conversation surrounding the Chicago Bears and a potential solution for their pass rush has turned toward Las Vegas Raiders star Maxx Crosby. ESPN analyst Dan Graziano recently highlighted Crosby as a prime candidate for an in-season trade should he become available before the deadline. While Maxx Crosby might stay with the Raiders for the time being, the landscape of the NFL often shifts rapidly once the season begins. If the Raiders struggle through a rebuilding year, trade rumors involving their five-time Pro Bowler will likely intensify. For the Chicago Bears, the possibility of acquiring an impact pass rusher like Maxx Crosby represents a major potential pivot point for the 2026 season. It is worth noting that the status of Maxx Crosby has already been volatile this offseason. A previous deal to send the edge rusher to the Baltimore Ravens collapsed after the Ravens expressed concerns regarding the condition of his knee. This history adds a layer of uncertainty to any future trade discussions involving his services. Despite these reports, Maxx Crosby remains under contract in Las Vegas, but the interest from other franchises remains high. For a team like the Chicago Bears, which has been open about its desire to monitor every situation, the prospect of landing a player of his caliber is significant. If the current plan of internal development fails to produce consistent results on the field, the front office will face immediate pressure to explore high-impact moves. The trade deadline often serves as a barometer for teams that find themselves in contention. And if Chicago enters that period, needing a definitive boost to their defensive pass rush, Maxx Crosby could emerge as the most logical target for the organization to pursue once again. General Manager Ryan Poles has acknowledged that the Chicago Bears did indeed look into the availability of Maxx Crosby during the previous window. Poles stated that the organization is committed to monitoring every situation across the league, balancing resource allocation, salary cap space, and draft pick compensation to determine if a move makes sense for the team. While Ryan Poles did not specify how aggressive the pursuit was, he confirmed that there was active dialogue. This admission confirms that the organization has done its due diligence on the five-time Pro Bowler. The decision-making process for Ryan Poles involves a complex evaluation of what the roster currently needs versus the cost of acquiring elite talent. Because the team has placed its confidence in the development of players like Dayo Odeyingbo, Austin Booker, and Shamar Turner, the front office has essentially created a wait-and-see environment. However, the reality remains that the production from the edge position opposite Montez Sweat is a primary concern for the coaching staff. By keeping those channels of communication open, Ryan Poles has ensured that the door is not entirely shut on acquiring a proven veteran if the internal solution proves inadequate. The internal mandate seems to be one of cautious patience, yet the admission of past dialogue shows that the desire for an impact player is real. If the current defensive rotation fails to generate the required pressure during the early stages of the 2026 season, the groundwork laid by the front office during these initial discussions could become the foundation for a more aggressive move. The flexibility to act remains, provided the compensation and health status of any target, particularly one with the history of Max Crosby, align with the team's long-term operational framework. Why does this situation matter so much for the Chicago Bears right now? The effectiveness of the defense relies heavily on the ability to pressure the quarterback, and currently, the entire burden rests on Montez Sweat. The lack of a proven, healthy rotation on the opposite side means that opposing offensive lines can focus their blocking schemes more easily, potentially limiting the impact of the entire defensive front. By relying on unproven players like Austin Booker and Shamar Turner, the team is effectively gambling that a change in coaching will bridge the gap between last year's struggles and the needed production for 2026. If this gamble fails, the team could find itself scrambling mid-season to find a pass-rushing threat. This is why the potential pursuit of a player like Max Crosby remains a recurring topic. His resume as a 5-time Pro Bowler speaks to the high level of disruption he provides, which would immediately change the dynamic of the Chicago defense. Without a significant addition, the team is essentially running the same defensive rotation that struggled previously, with the only variable being their individual physical recovery and coach-led improvement. The depth of the edge rusher group is inherently thin, and any injury setbacks could force the organization into an even more desperate position. Consequently, the performance of the current group during the first few weeks of the season will be the primary indicator of whether the front office needs to re-engage with teams like the Las Vegas Raiders. The pressure is on both the players to prove their growth and the coaching staff to elevate them, as the team cannot afford to remain stagnant if they intend to be a serious contender in the 2026 season. Looking ahead, the trajectory for the Chicago Bears regarding their edge rusher situation is linked directly to their performance on the field. If the team finds itself in contention as the season progresses, the need for an impact addition will likely outweigh the desire to stand pat with the current roster. Should the development of Dayo Odeyingbo, Austin Booker, and Shamar Turner yield the results that head coach Ben Johnson expects, the team might not need to make a move. However, if the defensive output mimics the shortcomings of the previous year, the probability of targeting a veteran like Max Crosby will spike. Ryan Poles has shown he is willing to engage in dialogue, and the framework for a deal has already been explored to some extent. The critical factor will be the internal evaluation of the defensive front's consistency. For the Chicago Bears, the 2026 season is a definitive test of their roster management philosophy. By choosing to forego early additions, they have placed an immense amount of responsibility on their young players and their coaching staff to exceed previous performance levels. If that confidence is misplaced, the team will be forced to look at the trade market with a sense of urgency. The entire saga of the 2026 offseason has been defined by this singular focus on the edge rusher position, and it will continue to dominate the discourse until the depth chart proves it can hold its own against NFL offensive lines. As the team navigates through the complexities of the schedule, the health and output of their pass rushers will dictate the team's overall ceiling. Every game serves as an audition for the current players, and for the front office, it serves as a live-action scouting report on whether they need to return to the trade table.